All right. Perfect. So we have here Paula. And this is as a massage therapist and stress and anxiety coach. Um, it's such a good subject for me. I mean, I think I could talk about it for quite a period of time. So I'm so happy to be able to have this opportunity to chat with you about it. So yeah, just tell everybody who you are, your backstory, how you got to do what you do.
Thank you so much, Sonia. It's so good to be here with you. So my name is Paula James. I am a movement specialist, and I did not set out to be a movement specialist. I was very active when I was a kid, lots of dance, and our backyard opened up onto the elementary school playground, so I got to use the big swings and slides, mostly unsupervised, right? So I love to swing high and jump off and run up the slide backward. So I was out and about. I did some martial arts when I got into high school and college. And then I was a literature major, so stories. I was playing music. On graduation, I bought a one-way ticket to Taipei, Taiwan, and I spent my first year out of college teaching English overseas. So I very much had a personality of being out and being active and doing things and meeting people and trying new things. And when I was overseas, I was in a vehicle accident, and it left me with 10 years of low back and neck pain. And so I went from this anything is possible and I can do it, to just waking up hurting every morning. And I saw lots of doctors and chiropractors and PTs and acupuncture. Like I tried all sorts of things, and I still hurt all the time. So some things took the edge off a little bit, but nothing really took me out of pain. So while I was in the middle of that long spell, I thought, well, okay, if I have to go through this, I want to map the territory. I want to come out of this able to be useful to other people. And so I kept trying different things, and I tried one kind of yoga, and it was okay, but it didn't really click for me. And then there was another yoga class that I actually didn't enjoy it while I was in class. I didn't like how I felt after, but the next morning when I woke up, I realized I had slept really well and my ribs were moving differently. And I thought, there's something here. And so
That reminds me of getting a good deep tissue massage. You only enjoy it a day or two later.
right. So I went back, and I think I bought a 10 class pass, and used it up like in 2 weeks. So the owner was very kind, and she said, would you like to upgrade that now to a monthly pass? And you know what? A couple months later, I didn't hurt. I wasn't totally out, but I didn't hurt on rest anymore. I didn't hurt when I woke up. I didn't hurt if I was just sitting. That really got my attention. Now, I still wasn't tremendously functional. And even, okay, so that was like, so I quit my job, which was as a high school English teacher. And I went off to yoga teacher training. And that was great. And then I started teaching, and I was still not particularly functional. I had some really nice deep poses. I didn't hurt anymore, like I said, when I woke up. But I couldn't walk very far, or my left knee would hurt. I couldn't use the computer mouse very long, or my right shoulder would hurt. So I was out of chronic pain, but I wasn't. I looked good, but I wasn't good for still a whole lot of activity. So I started training in something called the Feldenkrais method, which I had also dabbled with when I was and been very interested in when I was still in pain. That had spoken to me in some nice ways. And then the Feldenkrais method is really looking at a lot of things, but one is, how are your brain and body communicating? So if you think that your brain has a map of all the cells in your body, well, is your map accurate? Did somebody spill coffee on the map? Did part of the map never really get filled in? And so It's improving communication. Like, what does your brain know about what signals that your body is sending up are actually getting, like, imagine a whole bunch of emails coming in. Are they all getting opened? What's getting read? What's getting prioritized? So also what's wonderful, Moshe Feldenkrais created this method, and he passed before I started training, so I didn't meet him, but I have listened to a lot of lectures where he was the one speaking. Someone asked him, what's the essence of being human? And he said, free will. We are the beings who get to make choices. And
Sorry, and this is a type of yoga,
no,
correct?
this is a whole other modality. Yeah.
Okay.
So, so what was exciting for me and my students is that I started training in this other modality that really is looking at using movement to cultivate free will, using movement to cultivate human dignity, using movement to open up options so that you get out of even the box of your own habits. And so then that informed my yoga teaching right away, because I was a new yoga teacher. And so instead of getting caught in a trap of trying to get my students to look like me or look like some external ideal, I was really interested in, well, could we use the poses as a little puzzle? And then how are we going to approach that in a way that works for your body? And one thing that's important in the Feldenkrais method too is for the person to be able to evaluate from the inside what's the quality of their experience. So in my classes, we might try entering a yoga pose in a couple of different ways. And which one allows you to breathe more freely? Which one has you with less overall muscle tension and gripping? Which one feels like you just have more structural integrity in this shape? So we're using the poses sort of as a starting place for a conversation between brain and body, and then using some of the Feldenkrais approaches to improve the quality of that conversation or expand the conversation in more directions. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Oh, first of all, I think I definitely want to talk about this piece more because I think it'll be very good for lots of people that I know. But so this is it similar at all when people in yoga talk about like you need to open up your hips because that's where your shame lies and stuff like that? Does it kind of run along? It's completely different.
So I finished yoga training in 2000. I finished my first level yoga training in 2001. It wasn't until 2018 when I was studying in a different modality altogether that I got introduced to this idea. And I'm shocked that yoga programs aren't covering it, and maybe some do nowadays. Different people have different shapes, different depths to their hip sockets.
Yes, which a good chiropractor should tell you.
So some people have more shallow sockets, and then they have a huge range of movement. And this tends to be genetic, right? And so Indians are a genetic group that have more shallow sockets. And so then yoga asks you to do a whole bunch of extreme movements because Indian people as a genetic group are available for that. And that's where yoga was created. People from, for example, Celtic people, Irish, Scottish, tend to have deeper hip sockets.
Nordic.
And if they push to create the same range of motion for their deeper sockets, they'll actually aggravate the joint capsule, and they can take themselves straight into arthritis in the hips. One of my trainers, yes. And so I had a trainer in something called the McGill method, who said he lives in London, and he asked a hip surgeon in London, who are the people that he sees most for hip replacement surgery? And he said, white women who do yoga. And you can imagine that in London, England, most of the white women doing yoga are going to be of Celtic descent, at least partially. And so they are pushing themselves in some misguided assumption that bigger range of motion will improve their life. And what they're doing is not respecting their own tissues and their own structure, and then taking themselves into some real pain that has nothing to do with shame or anger, or I mean, I don't know, maybe shame and anger drove them into pushing themselves and ignoring signals from their body, but they're not cultivating a healthy, friendly relationship between their brain and their body, which, I mean, that's kind of what I think about with the yoga, with the Feldenkrais, is it's like a conversation. You throw out an idea, perhaps of movement, and sort of ask the body, what's this like for you? What do you think of this?
Mhm.
And the body might say, oh, that's nice. Or, oh, that makes me a little tight here. Oh, now I'm not breathing. Now my toes are curling. And you can override that and say, well, do it anyway. Or you can say, oh, that's interesting. What if we tried a different way? And so if you're actually looking for ease and harmony, if you're looking for a higher quality of experience, then you can cultivate more harmony, more high quality experience in your life. And if you get stuck on an external, well, other people can do this, so I should be able to. Well,
Which
that
is, yeah, it's so funny because I mean, aren't we a society of everyone is so unique and different? And it's so funny how we still generically put everyone in the same cookie cutter box. Isn't that funny, hey?
right. And so it's nice to have like this information about the hip sockets and share it in class and be able to help people evaluate for themselves. Do I have shallow or deep hip sockets? How would you know if nobody explained to you that it was possible and showed you? And so, for example, a deep lunge, you can give a stretch to the hip flexor, the psoas muscle in front, just by taking the leg back a little bit. But if you're going to do a really deep lunge, right, to sit down really low, I got to figure out a way to do this without my hand being in the middle. If you're going to sit down real low, well, that's fine for people with shallow sockets, but all that's going to do is aggravate the joint capsule for other folks. So like in my yoga classes, for example, the yoga challenge classes, after we do downward dog, I give people 3 options for how to come out of that. And for the shallow socket people, if you want to do a deep lunge, take a big step up with one foot, fine. And everyone else is looking at the floor. Nobody's even looking around to see who's doing that. If you want to walk both feet up to meet your hands, fine. If you want to walk your hands back to your feet, fine. If you're lunging, step your back foot up. Now everybody's in a forward bend. The shallow socket people got to do a lunge. Nobody was asked to do something they couldn't do and left standing up. The only person standing upright in a room full of people in a deep lunge, right? There just were 3 options presented, and you choose the option that you feel like doing today. And 2 of those should be pretty easy and available, one even easier than the other. And so there's space for everybody. And I even, in my most recent series of classes that just finished, at the beginning, one person came in saying she has retina issues. She can't take her head below her heart. Someone else had recently fractured her wrist. So they were doing their down dogs with their hands on chairs, right? So like everybody, there's a way in which everybody can connect with the essence of the pose and do something that's appropriate for their body today. And by having that friendly approach, well, let's work with you.
Yeah.
Then nobody gets pushed into hurting themselves.
Okay. So I do want to dive deeper into all of that, but let's go back to, because I know we're in the middle of you telling your story. So you were learning all this stuff.
So I was learning all this stuff. So my life was great, right? I was out of pain. I was teaching at a yoga studio. My students were getting better. They liked me, and they were feeling more comfortable. I was training in the Feldenkrais method. I was learning more stuff. Everything was fine. And then I was driving home, and I was waiting to turn left at a light, and I watched an older woman cross the street. And when she got up on the sidewalk, she tripped and fell. And so I parked, and I went over and sat down next to her because I wanted to make sure she wasn't, still dizzy when she got up. It was the second time in a week that she'd fallen when she went out for a walk. And it just really got my attention because I was in my early 30s. And even when I had pain, I could still trust myself for coordination and balance. And it just really made clear to me that would be a whole other life experience to not even be able to trust my body for coordination and balance, to have a beautiful day and not go for a walk around the block. She'd torn a hole in her pants, and she had some blood on the heels of her hands, and her husband and her adult son were at home, and she was already embarrassed about how they were going to give her a hard time when she got back. So like losing the ability to just confidently go out for a walk. So I started gradually, and I knew, she was like in her 70s. She wasn't, I offered to drive her home. She's like, no, I want to walk. Um, I knew she wasn't going to put on spandex and come to a yoga studio, right? And even if she did, the poses might help her over time. But I felt like I didn't really have tools to help her right away. Give her some practical things she could start implementing. So I began to shift my teaching from the yoga studio to the local recreation department. So lower barrier of entry to people just wear their street clothes, walk into a community building, wasn't a special place. And I started offering a range of classes from adaptive yoga up to the yoga challenge and gentle yoga for back pain. I built up a program that was 12 classes a week. I was seeing 100 students, and that was so fun. I got to see 100 different bodies and personalities every week. So I could get interested in feet or how the hips and shoulders are related, and then see how 100 different bodies and personalities responded to that thing I was interested in. And I started noticing what they had trouble with, and then going for different trainings to kind of fill in the gaps so that I could be a better teacher for the people who were actually coming. So I took a training from a physical therapist about the pelvic rotator cuff. She says, just like there's a rotator cuff team of muscles that operates the ball and socket of the shoulder joint, there's a rotator cuff team for the ball and socket of the hip joint. And dysregulation in that team affects standing balance, walking, incontinence, pain in the knees and the hips, the back, everything. So I just have been able to create this wonderful package of trainings that I would see there was a need in my students that I didn't yet have the skill level to meet, and I would look for a training that would help me be more skillful. And when I went to that training, I could ask questions, and they weren't just theoretical questions. It was, well, okay, but I've got this person with a double hip replacement. What do you do for that? I've got this one who has multiple sclerosis. How does your approach make me more able to serve her? And so it was a very practical. My students got really excited when there was a skip date. What are you going to learn now? So I had a lot of them came over and over, through like you have a lot of repeat clients. So then I really just started thinking of them as collaborators. We had this whole archive of shared classes together, and I could ask them to try something, and they would say, well, how does that relate to what you were doing with the toes 2 years ago? All right, so we had that kind of deep shared exploration. So I just have been exploring lots of different approaches. And then how do you work with the nervous system to give it a reset? Because that's going to affect stress hormones, which is going to affect muscle length and tone, which is, right, like there's a lot of interplay between these different levels. And then with the pandemic lockdown, of course, the in-person classes stopped, and I started teaching online and found that, wow, there's some really interesting possibilities with that the live classes actually work quite well. And some people preferred them because besides the fact they didn't have to travel, they didn't get distracted by what other people in the room were doing, right? Like, it's my experience. It's not, how come I can't do what she's doing, right? So that was interesting. I can create some slides with, images of skeletons or other things that help people to have visuals for what we're doing. And I can record some short pieces that they can look at their own pace. So even if they've got chronic pain or fatigue, they can't do a whole 60-minute class, they can get a little piece and work with that. So then this we're coming towards this short version of the long story. We're getting up to date. So it was in spending a lot more time online then, since 2020, that I made my way into some neurodivergent circles in social media. Someone had recommended a group for me, entrepreneurs with ADHD. And at first I thought I was just learning about another group of people. And then the more time I spent in there, the more I realized that I belonged, that I also have a brain with ADHD wiring, which explains a lot about why some things are easy and some things not so much. And then so now the deep dive of learning that I've been doing the last couple of years is, well, what's different in the wiring of autistic brains, of ADHD brains, of people with dyspraxia? And how can I structure sequences and classes and offers and packages so that that they feel met and that they don't have to work hard to take the information in, right? Like, how can I present the information so that it's just available and they can take it and work with it? And that has been tremendously rewarding. So sensory overwhelm can be a thing, time blindness can be a thing, taking on more than you can actually do can be a thing. And so just looking at how can I structure things in small pieces to not trigger resistance to doing a new thing, to give people choices so they feel like they have autonomy, to allow them to ask questions but not overwhelm them with information. So that has been then okay, how do I make movement available for all different types of brains so that everybody has access? And the other piece that goes with that is that there's a tremendously high rate of comorbidities in people with neurodivergence, hypermobility being chief among them. And so then how do we get some alignment and postural input and some strengthening movement input that is safe for this group so they're not risking injury, and that they actually take some of the workload off of their muscles and just feel more comfortable and capable in their lives. So that really is the guiding principle. I can talk more about different trainings I've had and wonderful students in classes, but that's really been the arc from me having my own experience of, oh, the world is my oyster, I can move anywhere, to, oh, I hurt all the time, to, oh, somebody else can't fix me, but I can learn things so that I can get myself out and I can learn things that helps me help other people. And then that circle of challenges that other people have just kind of keeps expanding, from pain to balance issues to how do I work with myself in a friendly way, to how do I work with my mind, how my brain works in a friendly way. So making communities feel safe and welcoming, and helping people just be more comfortable and confident in their own lives so they can move around the world and enjoy themselves.
Yeah, and I find that very interesting because even one of my old massage clients, and I'll have to see if I have her on Facebook, because she actually had the double hip replacement, and I remember talking to her about it because her muscles were so tight, but she couldn't do anything. You can't extend this, you can't bend more than 90 degrees, which I'm like, okay, you can't even bloody get up a chair. Like, these restrictions are absurd.
Right.
And but meanwhile, we were talking about martial arts people that have had hip replacements, and yet they're doing high kicks, but you're not supposed to. Like, it was all a very contradictory, and she was so restricted, and she had put on oodles of pounds, and she couldn't do anything about it, really. And I remember her being very frustrated, and we used to have conversation after conversation, to the point where I'm like, well, I'll do the best I can for you, and lots of heat, and maybe your husband can massage you in between treatments. Like, we really didn't have any options for her. So this is very intriguing. And I feel like, again, even in my own growth and journey of realizing that, I say very politely, doctors don't necessarily know everything. Again, the martial arts guy doing head kicks when apparently you can't bend a hip like that. So just throwing that out there. Yeah, so I love that piece of going into a pose and listening to your body and really seeing what it's telling you. Like, is this actually okay? Or like, what's happening? And just for people watching, this, like, I talk a lot with my clients about the mind-body connection, and if people have watched my videos, so I love that you actually turn it into, like, this is an actual map of the body, and are things, like, is it correct and accurate? Are things misplaced? Because literally, I have had massage clients that come in, they're like, oh, my low back hurts. And I'm like, okay, where? And they're like, well, I don't actually know, which I'm like, well, how do you not know? Like, right? You're feeling the pain. And then all of a sudden I'm working on like their shoulders. They're like, yeah, that's the spot that's bugging me. And I'm like,
well, okay. So a couple of things there. One is, and this is so interesting. So it overlaps with neurodivergence, and I won't go too technical for too long. Brain scans have been done comparing groups of people who are hypermobile. So their connective tissue is a little different. They're not as anchored at the joints. So they have huge, sometimes we call them double jointed or lax ligaments, and people who are not hypermobile. And when they do brain scans, they find three interesting differences. One is that in the people who are hypermobile, they might or might not be neurodivergent. They're just hypermobility shows up in about 20% of the general population, about 60% of the neurodivergent population. So it's in both. The amygdala, the part of the brain that detects threats, is both larger and more active in people who are hypermobile. And so they're going to have an elevated stress response, because if you think about all the brain cells participating like in a big committee meeting, they simply have more committee members that are saying, yes, I have a point. I think we're under attack, right? Like they've got a larger population that are doing that. In the hypermobile people, the area of the brain that processes emotions is larger and more active compared to the people that are not hypermobile. And so for these folks, a disappointment can be huge and crushing, and a good day can be the best day ever, right? Like more of their brain is interested in what's going on with their emotions. And your brain is how you know something is happening. If something happens and none of your brain cells pay attention to it, you can't really think about it because the information didn't come up to headquarters.
Well, and I think that's just lack of mind-body connection. The more you practice that connection, the more you can increase of actually pinpointing where your pain is.
Right, but let me tell you, the third area is the area of the brain that processes internal signals. And in the hypermobile people, that area of the brain is both smaller and less active than it is in the non-hypermobile folks. And so
they just need more training in it.
Yes, practice will help, but I think they need friendlier invitations, like easier questions to start with, because I've had folks come into my classes and I'll invite them to lay down on the floor and notice what's going on. And some people get anxious, like, what am I supposed to do? Well, that's like too big in general a question. Come in here and tell me what you see. What am I supposed to see? I'm not seeing anything. So to give them specific activities, here, try it this way, which one gives you bigger range of motion, which one lets you breathe more easily, which one feels more comfortable for you. So giving them things to compare, try this, try that. What do you notice about that thing, right? Be real specific in helping them direct their attention. Give them things. When we teach children how to read, we use large print books, right? Like, let's make it really easy to see the letters. So giving them ways in that are easy and friendly, so they go from win to win to win, instead of, well, I couldn't do that either, right? Like, is there any reason for me to come back? I'm just failing at everything. Like, I don't want anybody to be in that place. So how can I structure things so that people feel like I was successful at that, and then I was successful at that, and I'm feeling better too. So to recognize that, yes, mind-body connection, perceiving what's going on inside is important, and it's a skill that can be cultivated. And some people are going to benefit from a little more support in how they start doing that and cultivating that ability, because it doesn't come easily for them. It doesn't mean they can't learn it, but it's very much going to be a learned skill. It's not, they're not going to be natural in the way that like natural athletes or natural musicians are. They're going to need, it'll be worth doing, but they can really benefit from some hand holding and instruction to make it easier, because it won't just open up before them.
No, and I don't believe that actually works for anybody. Everybody has to be open, and especially like in my world, the more stressed we are, the less we think, the less observant we are, the less we can actually process anything. let alone have awareness. So absolutely, I think even if you're more prone to being like that empathetic person who's open to everybody's feelings, including your own, I do think we all need to practice and really keep that up. So that and I can't remember the name of the one that really helps with that connection and building that awareness and the pathways and stuff like that. So kind of describe that, like how does that go about cultivating that?
So let me tell you about two, because so Moshe Feldenkrais, and we can put that in the notes. I'll spell it now, and I can send it to you. So it's Feldenkrais. So it's the Feldenkrais method. He developed a method coming out of his own pain experience. He had played soccer as a young man and injured his knee. And then he was out on ships in World War II with the British Royal Navy. And that constant movement of the ship re-aggravated the knee injury. He lived in a 4th floor walk-up, no elevators. And so having a knee that didn't work wasn't really optional for, being able to go home and sleep and being able to get out in the world. He went to the doctors and they said, well, we'll do surgery. There's a 50% chance you'll be fine, a 50% chance you'll walk with a cane for the rest of your life. He was one of the first Europeans to get a black belt in judo, so 50-50 was not really acceptable to him. He said, that's like tossing a coin. You don't know anything.
Yeah.
His wife was a pediatrician. He was a physicist and an engineer. He studied her anatomy books. He looked at how young children learn how to move. And he just developed a whole way of working with his own brain and body, of trying things and paying attention to how he felt in the moment, half an hour later, an hour later. And he never healed the knee as far as the kneecap being properly anchored by the ligaments. He always, his kneecap could drift, but he learned how to organize the rest of his body around that so that he could sit and stand and climb stairs and move around the world without being in pain. And he worked in physics labs in different places in Europe, and he usually tried to get all the scientists out on the judo mat so that they were moving and interacting with each other. And so his colleagues noticed, oh, you're not limping anymore. Oh, you're not wincing anymore. Could you help me with my low back? Could you help my wife with her shoulder? Could you? And so he started. That's how he started being a practitioner. And then he realized that wasn't really very efficient. It would be nice to be able to help a whole room full of people. And so there are two aspects to his work. One is hands-on, one-on-one. And then the practitioner, he really wanted them to have friendly hands, to not be bossing around or correcting, but helping meet the person, bring in some input so that the nervous system could have some new ideas about possibilities, about connections, about how pressure traveled through. And then in the movement classes, it's a little bit like a yoga class, in that there's a room full of people and the teacher gives them movement directions to follow. But there's not so much the goal of a specific shape. And he often offers constraints. So can you do this, but you're not allowed to move this body part. And then you need to figure out how to do it in a different way, right? Okay, your habit is available, and now do it in a way that's not your habit. How do you figure that out? One of the first people that Moshe Feldenkrais trained is a woman named Ruthie Alan, and she became a practitioner and then a trainer. And then a doctor asked her, what does this method offer for bone health? And she said, well, nothing really. And the doctor gave her some statistics about how many women especially get osteoporosis and what that can mean for quality of life. And so she did a deep dive in what are the factors contributing to bone health or bone loss, and used a lot of Feldenkrais approaches. Well, how can we safely transmit pressure through the skeleton, even when some joints are vulnerable because of arthritis, or the bones are more vulnerable because they're not as dense as they used to be. And so that actually, so the Feldenkrais method is wonderful, and it tends to be slow and subtle. And Bones for Life as a set of practices is even more approachable for a lot of people, because you have the the added challenge of can you manage pressure? And the nervous system kind of rises to that challenge, sometimes in some really beautiful ways, and it can happen a little more quickly because it's not just a general exploration, but a little more focused, solve this puzzle, which is
Mhm.
an important puzzle for us to manage as organisms on Earth. And so that work can look like a whole lot of things. I taught a workshop once, and one of the challenges for people, I had big pieces of fabric and we wound them into circle wreaths and put them on the heads. And how do you organize to manage this little extra weight on your head? And it might sound like not very much, but one of the women who came to a workshop I taught came with a cane, didn't move around very well, didn't want to, a friend had brought her, didn't want to do very much of what we were doing. So I said, okay, fine, you can sit here. And then I taught the rest of the group. And after a few minutes, she had picked up one of those wreaths, put it on her head. She was striding around the room without a cane. I was like, no, when did you get up? But just having that little bit of extra challenge to manage so that pressure was coming down through the spine as well as the pressure of the feet on the ground really helped center her. And with that clear center, she was better coordinated for walking.
I very much believe that. It sounds like the Feldenkrais actually just forces you to engage all the small helper muscles that we neglect just by never using them. So I love that. That is especially essential when we get older. We're going to need all that. And
Right.
yes, because I have seen so many people, our posture nowadays, I don't know if people have realized this, but it drives me bananas. As someone who was taught to, upright posture, even the vehicles, I cannot find a vehicle that has a seat that doesn't push my head forward. They all have headrests like that. So my point is just that even this stupid chair, everything is set up to put us into bad posture.
Yeah.
And so I've had clients in the past where they come walking in, with their head leading the pack of their body.
Yeah.
And so I think that is great to put that and force your body to be like, okay, if I'm out of alignment, I'm going to get crushed. So I need to actually, like you said, reset. I love that. I think that is very valuable and is a different option because most people only think weightlifting is your only way to increase bone density. So that I also love. And I bet you a ton of people don't know that exists.
Right. Well, so Ruthie's point is that weightlifting is good for the muscles and it might or might not do anything for the bones.
Oh, it does. Weightlifting definitely helps increase bone density. That much I do know.
So what helps the bones is pressure traveling through the bones. And really it's the pressure of impact. It's on-off pressure. So as Ruthie did her studies, she said, swimmers might be beautiful specimens of muscle and cardiovascular fitness, but they don't tend to have particularly strong bones because there's no impact.
I believe that.
Cyclists can be great muscular, cardiovascular, but maybe mountain bikers. But if you're just a regular road cyclist, there's not much impact. Whereas running there is, right? Dancing there is. And so she's looking at, like, I'm not saying that weightlifting doesn't help, but what she's looking at is going in very directly, sending pressure through the skeleton so that it's not sort of a secondary benefit. Oh, as I strengthen my muscles, I also improve the bones. But and being able to be very targeted about, well, what about more pressure for the hips? What about more pressure for the hands and the arms, so that you can get through the length of the skeleton and also into specific areas. I'd like to go back to something you just said, though, because this breadth of training I've had included some of the work of Noelle Perez Christians out of Europe. She was one of the first Europeans to study yoga, and she complained to Mr. Iyengar about, well, why is this so hard for me? And he said, well, you're never in line with the pull of gravity. Your posture is crazy all the time. He gave her the challenge to spend time in India imitating the women of India until her shadow looked like theirs. And she did. And she developed a whole method of teaching, really looking at what are the alignment habits of traditional people who don't have cars or computers, who walk most places, who carry heavy, exactly, carrying things on their head. And then what can we take from that to teach folks? And so one thing that has been such a savior for me is I get these balls for not very much. My lead magnet is a pain-free sitting quick guide. And I'll give you a link to that. That's free, and it just has a few quick tips. And this is one of them. So the ball I like a lot because you can take the air out. It can go in your pocket or your carry-on bag or whatever. And then you just put in whatever you need when you get to your destination. And then this can go behind. I like it behind the ribs, and I'll explain more in that quick guide why. But with this behind the ribs, then it gives you the support you need so that you're not actually with your spine in a neutral shape. You won't get support from a lot of those chairs or car seats. You have to distort your spine in order to lean back against them. So with something like this, you can fill in the gaps, and then you can sit comfortably in your car seat, on an airplane seat. I went to a concert a couple weeks ago that was held at a church, and I knew the church pews were going to be a disaster for sitting, so I took this with me, and I sat perfectly comfortably for a couple hours. But it was because I made sure that I had support for my back. They kept my spine in a neutral shape. So the quick guide is no charge, and it'll give you a couple things that you can implement right away that will help a lot.
That is a really good idea, because I know for myself, I use my Oma's and my mom's old bum cushions where they used to support their hips. So I've got those I'll put behind in my truck. But I would have never thought of a inflatable ball, because every seat is going to need a different amount and a different. Yes, so that's very clever. I really, really like that. And it's for people watching too, just to take that moment and evaluate how you're sitting. And I will give a little warning to people. My brother is a big computer nerd. I'm not sure he's actually worked out ever, to be honest. He's the indoorsy kind. And literally, I remember, this is years ago. So unfortunately for him, love him to pieces, but it's probably gotten worse. I literally forced his spine straight one time in the mirror, and he said it was so incredibly painful to stand straight. And I just guys, if you ever see the old people in the store, we need to take your spine seriously. It's not too late.
So one of the trainings that I did just a few years ago, and I'm amazed, I thought I was a good practitioner 10, 15 years ago, and I was, but then some of the things that I found my way into recently have been so life-changing. So integrative positional therapy, one of the ideas there is if you take a muscle that's tight and then stretch it, you make it even tighter.
Yes.
If you bring the end points of the muscle closer together so that it's slack, the muscle softens. And if you keep it in a slack position for 60 seconds, the spindle cells in the belly of the muscle get a reset, and it's more ready for a new idea. So if you think, because I was a literature major, right? Well, to tie up some of the loops here. If you've been sitting like this all day working at your computer, these pectoralis muscles might conclude, oh, my mission is to keep the upper arm close to the sternum. And now if you try to force the shoulders back, you start up a conflict because you're asking the pectoralis to fail in its mission. If instead you bring the arm across and hold it in place so that you're supporting that muscle in a slack shape, the muscle finally realizes, oh, mission accomplished, and I don't have to do it all by myself. You stay there for a minute, the muscle relaxes, and then you're able to have a much bigger range of motion without fighting. Likewise,
I'm just going to say, for the generic people, I'll put that in the context of, don't stretch a cold muscle. Give it some love first.
And I would say slacken first, right? It's not even just about moving.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about are folks that have gotten into this is as upright as they get, right? And so they're short in the front of the hips. So you can slacken these guys, give them a reset so they're available for a new idea. And then one thing I like to do is just spend some time on my belly with my knees bent a little behind me. I put a small pillow under the front of each shoulder, so I'm a little more open in the front. I'm not trying to do anything. With every breath in and out, because I'm lying on my belly and chest front, then this area gets to move with every breath. It loosens up, softens up. When I get up from that, and I usually fall asleep, so when I get up from that nap, I feel so much more upright, more able to breathe. I feel very loose and comfortable in the hips and shoulders. Everything's totally fine. So yes, getting more upright is nice. And then I'm just interested in, well, what are some of the friendlier ways of getting there? Another student I had scoliosis and very much rounded forward, probably not too unlike your brother. And she said, I understand what you mean about being upright, but when I do that, I have to push with my hands to be up and I can't breathe. And so if she didn't like how she looked, but if she was ever going to be like in a family photo, she would push herself upright. And then as soon as the photo was over, she would collapse and breathe.
Really forcing it.
She came to a class one time. She was the only person who showed up. So I was like, all right, we got to figure this out. She had a reverse breathing pattern. When she inhaled, breathed in, she pulled her belly in. When she breathed out, she pushed her belly out.
Oh, that is odd.
All of her concentration to switch that. Breathe in, let your belly get bigger. Breathe out, make your belly get smaller. But when she did, she was able to sit upright and she was totally fine. And I even asked her, are you pushing? And she said, no. She was sitting on a chair. She started waving her arms and legs. She went from not being able to sit upright without using her hands to push to being upright and having the core stability to move her arms and legs. And it was just a switch of a breathing pattern. So there can be all sorts of different puzzles that need solving in order to make the end result ability available.
Well, and I will say too, I think that I find that very intriguing, but I think this is a good wake-up call for most women out there. Obviously, I've never been a man, so I don't know how it is. Their typical, what they tend to do to make themselves look better. But I know for us, like when I was in high school, always try to suck that belly in. And a lot of women, misguided, push the bum out, which does havoc. Obviously, hips, back, everything just gets all out of alignment. But all these weird things we do to try and make ourselves look better. And really, like, who knows what sort of imbalances and weird opposite breathing things we could be causing.
And they absolutely don't work. So this is one thing I love to do with a group of people is I'll have, when we meet in person, I'll have everybody sit in the circle and just kind of take a look around at how everybody else looks. Okay, fine. And now everybody pull your belly in. And then we look around the circle and they look the same. They look smaller. So all they do is they look more uncomfortable because now they've got more tension in their neck and shoulders and they're not breathing as well. So all they accomplish is to be less comfortable and to look less comfortable, but they don't actually look one or two dress sizes smaller. So it doesn't do anything.
It's so funny. It's these weird things we do to ourselves. Yes. Yeah, that's very intriguing. So I guess I also would like to ask, because obviously you can do everything online, which is beautiful. I think that's so amazing. Obviously, you can help with people's postures and uncover these weird little twerks and issues we've potentially caused ourselves in most cases inadvertently. Do you still teach yoga classes?
Yeah, I teach 5 classes a week in person.
Mm.
And
so are you located where?
I'm in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And just on the a brief diversion. 3 of those at the moment are for high support neurodivergent adults. So some of them are non-vocal, all of them get driven by a staff member. And so it's been really interesting, again, in the sense of, well, what can I learn about different needs of different people? How to make a class that feels safe and welcoming for them. And one of the modalities I trained in is called spatial dynamics. One of the things we're looking at is the space within your skin is your body, the space about an arm's distance all around you is your personal space, and then the distance between you and another person or the wall or the tree is the social space. And so so a healthy person can make decisions, make choices about how they show up with their awareness and their actions in all 3 of those spaces. So then helping this population of people be a little more connected with their awareness and a little more able to make choices about how they show up and move in all 3 of those spaces. So I've been learning a lot working with them. And then I also have an in-person yoga challenge and an in-person adaptive chair class at the moment. And those are in Gaithersburg, Maryland, so Montgomery County. And then I have 5 online classes each week, yoga challenge, adaptive chair yoga, and a gentle yoga for back pain. The gentle yoga for back pain is much more Feldenkrais in a collection from my toolkit. I start each of those classes asking whoever has come if there are any body parts or functions in their life that need a little extra attention. And then if nobody has anything, I can teach something. But I really like to run it like an improv. Well, who's here? What do they need? And what can I pull from the toolkit that meets them where they are right now? And then I have a digital package for the neck and shoulders that are very short videos, 5 to 8 minutes each. There's 7 different videos that are looking at one specific technique. That's a $27 package with videos and a PDF. And what I'm pulling together, which I'm very excited about, is a holiday kit that will launch on November 14th, looking at different areas of challenge that my audience has around the holidays. So you might be traveling for the holidays. What are some practical tips to help you travel more comfortably? You might much longer cooking sessions in the kitchen, or how do you lift a heavy turkey? How do you bake cookies all day? You might have
grandma's couch that you can't get back out of.
Exactly. You might be sleeping in strange beds. You might be out of your routine. You might be spending days either at gatherings and or at work, social gatherings with all the sensory input of lots of different people. So how do you give your nervous system a reset after you've been overdone? And how do you negotiate those body, personal, and social spaces with a little more self-care so that you don't get as overwhelmed in the first place? So that yes. I'm really excited about. Well, can I pull together a little sampler package that hopefully will help people have holidays that are more enjoyable instead of as an endurance event.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. It is, even for, I'll say, the most aware person with the best stress and anxiety tools in their belt, it is a trying season. That is for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say I hear that. I know I always cook and I come out of that kitchen like 10 hours later, feet are sore, and yeah. I did. Oh, what else did I want to ask? Shoot, I got all caught up in the Christmas stuff, and that's. Oh, there's in that $27 package. Yes, that's what it was. So I do remember from all my massage days, most of us in our occipitals, which for people is the under that little notch on the back of our head, where our head literally sits on our spine, we have these tiny irritable muscles. And I'm going to say 99.9% of us all have at least one trigger point or knot in there that gets irritated, whether it's sleep, tension, your boss comes in and you give a little extra, and all of a sudden you got a headache. Does the neck, that $27 package, does that kind of work up in that area? Does it help release that?
let me see what I can remember as I run through. So one of the, I'll give you this one just as a gift here. If you let your arms hang down to your sides and rotate your arms so the palms of the hands face forward, so the palms of the hands face the wall behind you. Right? So that everybody knows where their hands are, right? So that's an easy direction to follow. So if you rotate so the palms face the wall behind you, I think if you don't resist, what you'll find is that your shoulders start creeping forward and your head starts creeping forward. And so I don't care what you do, type, drive your car, wash dishes. If you've got your upper arms in this internal rotation, you're going to be driving your shoulders forward, your spine rounds, your head comes forward. You're going to generate more tension back here just because you're needing to manage the weight of your head out in front of your body.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And if you keep the palms facing behind you and try to sit up straight, can you feel how that's a world of tension and effort?
A little bit in my shoulders.
Okay. Now try this. Let it go. Go back into your collapse. Now rotate so the palms of the hands face forward. Can you feel the shoulders open and move back and the head comes back over the spine?
Yeah, it feels better in between my shoulder blades, but I know my areas I need help with. That's for sure.
So one of the things that I look at in this package is just if you, I think of it like a line of dominoes. If you push the first domino in the direction of collapse, then you get a cascade effect and you get collapse in a whole bunch of places. If you push the first domino in a line of uprightness and harmony, then you get more ease, more effortless uprightness. And then a lot of things work better. So I was a musician too, right? If you think about a string instrument, if some strings are too short and others are too long, the instrument's out of tune, and it doesn't matter how hard you try. It doesn't matter if you have a Stradivarius, it's out of tune.
Imbalance is imbalance.
And you don't need a new instrument, and you don't need to try harder, and you don't need a new teacher. You just need to tune it up. And so if your shoulders are out of tune, too short in the front, too long in the back, you're going to be vulnerable to injury, and anything you do is going to be less graceful, less coordinated, more effort than it needs to be. And so if you simply start tuning, then you'll find that you have more ease. Even simple things work better. I've got some techniques in there for slackening so that we're shortening some of the key muscles so that they quit being attached to their to that shape that has you out. There are things, I did not put them in this one, but there are things that will specifically slacken the muscles of the neck. And that I'm going to do another package that's all on slackening, and we'll cover all of those. We've also got some muscle length cues. Try this. If you turn your head right and left, just notice what is your range of turning like right now.
Oh, I'm a bad example. I have pretty good range.
And so now we're going to think about the sternocleidomastoid. So it goes to the skull behind the ear and the top of the sternum. Put your hands in the middle of that muscle.
And for everyone, that's what it makes these guys right here.
Yeah.
Just for everyone watching.
And then if you just pull apart, and it's not deep pressure, it's just like you're petting a cat. So you start together, pull to the ends of the muscle, and then come away. You're just giving that muscle an invitation, an indication to get a little bit longer. And then for most folks, like you can see even that little bit, the shoulder's sitting a little lower on me. And now if I turn in that direction, I get a little more range of turning there compared to the other way. So there are some real gentle things that will help address some of that tension and commitment to unhelpful shapes and positions in the neck.
Yeah, because I really think that could be for $27. Right? Like, how can you go wrong? And I will say, again, 99% of all massage people, of everyone in this world, has neck and shoulder issues. All of us do, because we're computer, we're car. We're shoulders forward, like you said. This is our society now. So I know a lot of my clients, I would spend, probably a third of the session just on neck and shoulders alone. And if you've ever had your neck massaged, it's so tight, it's not pleasant. So for $27, if you can make your massage therapist job easier and you're paying less,
well, it's also,
that's a win.
So What I find so interesting is this upright posture that we have. All the weight of the upper body, the head, anything in your shoulder bag is resting on these highly mobile ball and socket joints of the hips. And so any imbalance you've got in this area is going to ripple out into gripping patterns in other places. So yes, your neck might be your area of complaint, but this might be on the receiving end of imbalances down here. And so if you can do something from a $27 package to take the edge off here, then you go into your massage therapist who might be able to say, now that we're not spending 1/3 of the session up here, I can actually work on the areas that are the culprits.
Well, and that's, I will say, any good massage therapist will tell you if one end's not right, the other end ain't right.
Right.
So if your massage therapist doesn't know this, please go find a new one.
Right.
For anyone watching. Yeah, I think that again is going to be something where any of your techniques, the online yoga, I mean, the glutes are such, for anyone watching, that's your butt, your big old butt muscles, huge muscles. And literally, okay, this is going to sound weird, but guys, it's a fact. We are a society of butt clenchers. I don't know why we do this, but almost all of us tend to clench our bums. So these poor little muscles, poor big muscles are just constantly worn out. So I would say, even, I know generically a lot of people don't associate yoga and neck issues hand in hand necessarily, but if you want to do the $27 package and then even attend a couple of your sessions to really work with those lower back hip muscles, I feel like you're going to get quite the results.
Well, the comments that I get when I ask at the beginning of each class what needs attention, the big four are always neck, shoulders, low back, and hips. So I've done this package on neck and shoulders. I'm working on the holiday kit next. What I'd like to do after that is work on another $27 package all about the low back and another one all about the hips. And then those eventually will get bundled so you could get them independently. And if you're interested, get the neck package. I will make an upgrade available specifically for existing customers, so you don't you won't have blown your chance to get a deal, right? So if you're interested, get the neck package now, and then when the others are ready, there will be an opportunity for you to upgrade, and there will be an opportunity to bundle those. But that's my hope, is that giving people, because what I remember from when I hurt was that lack of agency. And what I hear from a lot of people is, well, it's like my body is attacking me, or it's letting me down. And the body never does. It is always doing everything it can to keep you alive and to help you to do what you want to do. And then you need to support it so that it has what it needs in order to do that. And so my hope, and so when I hurt, like, I'd see the chiropractor and I'd feel better after the adjustment. And I'd ask, what can I do at home? And they said, well, nothing, come back in 2 weeks. I was like, I'm going to hurt between now and then. Like, what can I do?
Careful advice.
So I'm so enthusiastic about getting people tools that they can implement right away so that they feel like they have some power here. They have some agency to make their lives a little better, a little more comfortable. They're not just at the mercy of, how did I feel when I woke up, or when am I next able to get into my massage therapist or my chiropractor? But what can I do right now that will have a positive impact on my life and how I feel?
Well, and for people watching too, I just want to have that shout out of it really is to remember, ourselves, everything is to help us. Like, even from my perspective as the stress and anxiety, when we're having the fear, when we have, whether you have social anxiety or fear of doing something new in your business or whatever it is, it's all to keep us in the comfort zone, because that's safe. We don't have bears chasing us or cougars living in the woods as cavemen anymore. So anytime something's new or different, a fear comes along, and then our little safety protector guy's like, okay, let's not do it because it thinks it's a bear, right? So it's that, even though our safety mechanisms really are counterproductive mentally and physically, unfortunately, it's just because we don't know any better. Our bodies currently don't know any better. And that's where people like you come in so it can teach us, so we can help our bodies to help us better. Yeah, like we're never against ourselves. It's just, even when we're limping, we're just, our body's trying to do its best. It just doesn't know a better way yet. So
Right.
yeah, I just hope, yeah, people watching keep that in mind. And that's why people like you and I exist, to help with those better ways, so you can help your body help you.
Well, and absolutely. And I want to underline a little bit the importance of that. I don't know. I don't even want to say manage or get rid of stress, but how do you work with it so that you have a fuller life? So the nervous system has 4 levels of activation. When you feel safe, you're available to be in engagement. You get a full range of emotions. You can be playful, you can be creative, you can connect with other people. When you feel like this is an unsafe place, you want to get out of here. That's flight. The emotion that's dominant is fear. You don't have access to joy and curiosity and all. You just are afraid and you want to get away. You're not going to sleep as well, digest as well, all that stuff, because you're running stress hormones. You're not set up for digestion and repair. And if you feel like you can't get away, you go into fight. You want to dominate the scene. Now you're in rage. And you're maybe instigating conflicts with other people. You're trying to control the space you're in. You're not looking to connect. You're not creative or playful. You're not joyful. You're running the show. If you feel you can't get away or win the fight, you go into what is sometimes called freeze, like you play dead, or you go into
Awesome.
fawn and you try to please whoever seems to have power. You're not connected to yourself. You're not connected to being creative in this place. You're just trying to survive. So you
Yeah, you're
want
kind of a bit of a shell at that point, really, unfortunately.
so you want to get yourself, you might for safety need to go into one of these, and then you'd like to be able to recognize when the situation is safe and have tools to walk your body chemistry back down to engagement, so that you can get full benefit from the lunch that you eat, and you can get full rest from the sleep that you get, and so that you can actually show up and connect with other people and create and play and have a rich, meaningful life. You're not just enduring, you're not just surviving, but you could contribute, you could grow, you could enjoy yourself.
Yes. Yeah, and I think people forget that that is possible. So for sure. All right. Yeah, I'm sure we could probably go on for quite a bit longer, but we do got to cut it off somewhere.
Sonia, what a wonderful conversation. Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Mm-hmm. Is there, so we know your $27 package. We know you have the lead magnet. I'm going to put all the links in the description for the video. Is there anything else? You have the online and in-person classes. Is there anything else you have to share with people? How
So
can they get it?
the holiday kit will launch on November 14th, and I'm also looking at doing a pain-free New Year starter, which would be a similar probably $47 package that would give, I'm thinking of small activities, like one activity, 3 to 5 minutes, could fit on a deck of a card, and then you could just pick a card, and instead of starting with a really ambitious, I'm going to get a gym membership and work out an hour every day. Maybe you could say 3 days a week, I'm going to do 1 3 to 5 minute activity, and you pull a card and then you do that. And maybe you start working up to 2 cards a day. So there will be a package coming out in the new year that has some very small, gentle ways to get into bringing some more movement into your days. And there will be a Facebook group for a couple months with some community support around that. So it's not a long, you'll get lifetime access to the materials, but it's not a lifetime commitment to the community. That'll be short. So those are, there are things coming. The holiday kit in the near horizon, the New Year kit in January, and then some other digital packages for low back, hips, slackening, muscle length cues, a whole bunch in 2025.
Oh, I love that. You know what? And I was just thinking, unfortunately, and I mean this as polite as I can, but we're a fairly selfish world nowadays. So people watching, you might not think you need this, but think of your grandma, think of your mom, even like $47. This might be a good gift for maybe someone who's been in a car accident, or grandma who hates that she can't go for those walks anymore. Like, think outside the box, and yeah, who in your life could benefit? Because $47, oh my goodness, like that is extremely affordable. And if grandma can't afford it, or your mom, or whoever, yeah, like I feel like, don't just think of yourself. Do you have any friends, any family? Maybe your best friend's stepmom could use this. Who knows?
Thank you, Sonia. Yeah, it makes it
Oh,
great. And especially if you've got people that are hard to shop for because they already have everything they need. Well, a lot of people could use a little more comfort.
exactly. Especially, I mean, a lot of us during COVID really got too sedentary and are still struggling to get back out and move more, and yeah, have those active lives we once had. It's changed a lot, but that's a whole new story.
Sonia, thank you
Okay.
so much. You're a wonderful interviewer. I
Oh,
thoroughly enjoyed our time together.
thank you. And yeah, I think I will recommend, how can people just follow you? They're not ready to commit. They're not ready to
Right.
buy.
So I'll give you some links you can put in. So my website is painfreewithpaula.com, and there'll be links on that page that take you to everything. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, and so they can direct messaging me on one of those social media platforms is usually quicker. My email inbox gets away from me sometimes, but the website is painfreewithpaula.com, and that has links to everything that we talked about here.
Yeah, because I know some people, what is this statistic? People need to follow you for about 6 months before they trust you enough to buy sometimes. So just so people can politely stalk you and they can get to know you and then purchase your stuff later if they're not ready now, although $27.
Well, and I have a free Facebook group that is Vibrant Living with Paula James. And so for folks that are on Facebook, I post little movement videos in there that are entertaining to see, and some practical tips. And then there'll be links to everything that I'm talking about. And I'm doing some polls in there right now to just find out what sort of, I know what challenges I think people have for the holidays, but I'm interested to actually hear from them. So that's important too.
Oh, perfect. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so now I think we've covered, everyone can get a hold of you, everyone can be part of your world. That's awesome. Like I said, I will post the links in the description so people can click and find you easily. And yeah, thank you so much. This has been super informative. Definitely some things like the Feldenkrais, I'd never heard of that. So that's definitely interesting. I love it. I think it's beneficial for tons of people. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Sonia.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.